question is, what went wrong? How did we end up in such a mess? The argument I want to make is that we made three fundamental errors. Number one, we misunderstood the terrorist threat. Number two, we did not have a healthy appreciation of the limits of military force. And number three, and most remarkably, we did not understand how difficult it was to spread democracy at the end of a rifle barrel. The three different flaws in this grand strategy. And before I go on, I want to make a quick point. As I said to you, there is this divide among the global dominators between the neoconservatives and the liberal imperialists. But you want to remember that after September 11th and after the war in Afghanistan, when Bush was pushing us to go to war against Iraq, that he had much support from Democrats. He had much support from the liberal imperialists. I'm going to explain why this is the case in due course. But the idea that Bush went to war and the liberal imperialists opposed him is simply wrong. You all understand that Barack Obama does not have a single foreign policy advisor who opposed the Iraq war. Every single one of Barack Obama's advisors favored the Iraq war. The only person in that administration who was opposed to the war was Barack Obama himself. Right? This just shows you the extent to which the liberal imperialists and the neoconservatives came together. And it happened after Afghanistan, and I'll talk about that in due course. Okay, first let's just talk about the terrorist threat and how we blew that. Three ways we blew it. First of all, Bush says that the threat is global. In other words, we have to go after every terrorist organization on the planet. And furthermore, he says that states like Iraq, Iran, Syria, this is the famous or infamous axis of evil, those states, what are sometimes called rogue states, are inextricably linked or tied to terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda. So Bush says, not only do we have to take out every terrorist group on the planet, we've got to take out rogue states too, because they're joined at the hip with these terrorist organizations. This is crazy. First of all, there are terrorist groups all over the planet. Beating them is very difficult, as we've discovered with Al-Qaeda. It can be done, but it's very difficult. The idea that you're going to take on all of these terrorist groups at once is really asking for trouble. Furthermore, the idea that states like Iraq, Iran, and Syria are friendly with Al-Qaeda is simply wrong. Iran helped us defeat the Taliban in Afghanistan in the fall of 2001. Syria, as Seymour Hersh has documented in The New Yorker, played a key role in cooperating with us to defeat some terrorist attacks after September 11th. And there was no evidence, despite prodigious efforts by the Bush administration to show otherwise, that Saddam and Osama bin Laden were linked at the hip. In fact, they didn't like each other at all. So the idea that we had to take out rogue states because they were joined at the hip with terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda was simply wrong. In fact, they would have been important allies in that fight. And again, the last thing you wanted to do was take on terrorist groups that didn't have their gun sights on you. That's one mistake we made. Another mistake we made is we just greatly overestimated how dangerous the threat was. I mean, there's no question that we got whacked good on September 11th. Nobody would deny that. It was a devastating attack, but it was never duplicated. They've never come close. What's the terrorist threat that we have faced since September 11th? The shoe bomber? The underwear bomber? Telling me we're spending more money than the rest of the world put together on defense to deal with the shoe bomber? The underwear bomber? Is there a terrorist threat that we face? Of course there is. Is it a serious threat? Yes. How serious? Not that serious. I'm sorry. Right? Does not justify all the hype we've heard since September 11th, and we've had constant references to imminent attacks. There's been no imminent attacks, nothing close to an imminent attack. So number one, they enlarged the target to the point where it became almost impossible to win. Number two, they greatly overestimated how dangerous these terrorist groups are. And number three, and most importantly, they misunderstood why they hate us.